Hey, good morning, everybody. My name's Joshua. I am the Education and Community Outreach Manager here at MPG. And in the winters, I get to study mountain lions. So I have, for the past 5 years now, headed up a mountain lion population survey on the property. So I'll tell you a little bit about all that, but I want to first just tell you about MPG because you may not be familiar with who we are and what we do. So you can see behind me, got the sun coming up here behind Mount Baldy, and so you can see a little bit of the ranch and a little bit of what we've got for habitat here, but we extend down to the Bitterroot River in the west and then back to forested Forest Service land in the east. We go north up to about Miller Creek and south over Upper Woodchuck if you're familiar with the area, but we have riparian habitat, so we've got the river bottom stuff, we've got grassland, we have sageland, steppe habitat, and then we've got forests. So we have quite a bit of diverse areas here on the ranch, and we're quite large too. We are over 15,000 acres, and we are privately owned, we're managed for conservation, and we're more like a biological research station than a ranch. So this property started, we started here in 2009, and we've gradually gotten bigger over the course of our time here. To grow to over 15,000 acres. And we are studying everything you can think of. And what we're trying to do is figure out how to take lands that have seen human impacts from various activities, whether it's agriculture, cattle ranching, timber industry, whatever it may be. And we're trying to figure out how to get those lands to as native as possible in species diversity and as biodiverse as possible as we can. And it's a challenge, and we have successes and failures along the way, and what we are hopeful to be able to do is to make all of that research publicly available so that everybody out there who either is a large landowner or a small landowner or whatever can come to us and we can help them solve similar puzzles. So we're studying everything here that you can think of to try to sort all that out, from the soil microbes and how those communities play their part through the grasses, the forbs, the trees, the shrubs, the pollinators, the snakes, the bees, the bears, and the mountain lions, and all the raptors and songbirds and everything else. So we have research projects on all of this stuff, and then we get to look at how it all plays together and how it interacts. So it's a really unique scenario here, and I'm very privileged to be able to be a part of this. And so my biggest responsibility is education and outreach. So I try to connect all of you and the public and the university here and anybody else with what is going on the ranch. So as part of what I get to do, I get to talk with all of you today, which is really exciting for me. So shifting into mountain lions then, we developed this project with Mike Sawaya of Sinopa Industries in the winter of 2012-2013. So that was about 6 years ago. And we started to kind of get our ducks in a row then, and we worked with Mike because he had then and continues to have a very successful project in the Yellowstone ecosystem, and we wanted to do something non-invasive. And so we were reading his research. It was exciting, it was working, he was getting good results, and so we decided to develop our protocols based on what he was up to, and still is up to. And so he was, gracious enough to come on board and help us out and help us get everything established. And here we are off and running today with that. So non-invasive, what does that mean? It means that we're not handling cats. We're not putting collars on cats. We are trying to be as hands-off as we can be so that we don't disturb them, that our presence is not a conflict at all. We try to really just leave them alone. So when we go out into the forests and are looking for DNA samples and looking for tracks, our season starts off really with like there's a discovery period where we're really just looking to find tracks. We have a sense of where individuals have been from previous years, and we will go out, we'll find the tracks in the snow, we backtrack, which means we're going the opposite direction from the way the mountain lion was going, again to try to not bump into them, not move them around unnecessarily and to just limit the possibility of conflict. And so we go the opposite direction, and then we find hair, we find scat, and we find bed sites, we find kill sites, we find sometimes den sites, and this is, we're able to pick up the hair and the scat, and from that goes to Rocky Mountain Research Station in town here in Missoula, and so they're a genetics laboratory. They're able to do their magic to extract the DNA from these samples. Some of the samples are not very good. They're degraded. The DNA is not viable enough to tell us what's going on. So maybe we don't get any information back from that. But from the majority of it, maybe about 3/4 of what we send off, we get at least a positive species identification that says, yes, confirmed, this is mountain lion. It can be challenging with hair. Scat we tend to be pretty solid with, but sometimes we confuse hair and pick up the wrong thing. We've gotten a lot better with that over the years, though. And so then after I get species identification, it gets down to individual identification, and that comes back then with however many individuals we've identified for that winter season. And it is a snapshot. It's a snapshot of that winter. And what we've been able to see over the years is how many individuals on the property actually live on the property. And for how many individuals this is at least a part of their home territory, because they can have very large home ranges. And we come in at just over 15,000 acres, which is big, but compared to what's a potential home range for a cougar, that maybe they would stay mostly on our property, and some would range off of the property, which is what we see. And through that genetic research, then we've been able to identify family groups, and how many individuals we have, and how everyone is related, and how that's playing out on the landscape. So at this point, we've identified 19 individuals on the property, or that have at least passed through, which is a lot. And so from a carrying capacity standpoint, that would seem like too many. But thankfully, those individuals don't all live here. The bulk of the mountain lions that we identify are passing through. They're dispersing juvenile males. And so the males, when they reach a dispersal age at about 1.5-ish, 2 years, anywhere between 11 months and 2 years, they go out in search of territory of their own. And so those are the ones that you find getting into trouble, coming into town. They're looking for a home and looking for a place that they can set up shop. And so they're the ones that we see moving through in the winter. So we get this snapshot with a lot of dispersing males moving. We'll usually get one territorial male that we know is a breeding male, who's having offspring. And then we see the same females represented year by year by year, and they have offspring, and so we get a sense of how many live here. So as of last winter, we believe there are 7 individuals making use of the property in part or in full as a portion of their home range. 3 of those individuals are pretty young. 2 of them were just probably dispersing end of last winter, so they were just about 1.5, 2 years old. They were some kittens that we had identified the previous winter. And one of those is a male, and the rest are all females. Some of them are related to each other, and they share territory with their offspring. Some of them are not related, and they still share territory, some really close overlapping territory. And we've seen some really exciting things in this, where we're finding that unrelated individuals are more tolerant of each other in terms of sharing territory, and also in sharing food resources. We've bumped mountain lions off of kills and collect up the DNA, and we just kind of assume, okay, well, everybody's probably related here. And then we get the DNA back and we realize, oh, they're not. They're unrelated individuals, and they're sharing food resources, which is an exciting thing to see, because it kind of runs counter to what the literature would put forward. But other studies are seeing it as well. So Mark Elbrock's study being one. He's in the Yellowstone ecosystem as well. So that's exciting stuff. We learn new things because we go into it with certain assumptions, and then we find out that we're wrong, which is really pretty exciting.
That's science.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, it's the process of discovery, and it's a really exciting thing.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and school, and I'm going to start off with R. Lee in Mr. Stockton's class. Do you guys have one or two questions about mountain lions habitat? What's going on at MPG Ranch?
We got a question for her.
I can see you. Anybody got a question?
Is that muted?
You're unmuted.
How many kittens how many kittens are in a litter each year on average?
Sure. Yeah, good question. That varies. Typically, it's 1 to 4. 4 is definitely the high end. Average is like 2 or 3, but we have seen up to 4. We had one of the females on the ranch 2 winters ago had 4 kittens. They were born in early October, and by February she was down to 2. So it's rare that if you have a litter of that size that all 4 are going to be successfully brought to dispersal age or adulthood. So the average survival rate in a litter, even if it's large, is still only like 1 or 2. I think it's actually like a decimal between the 2 of those. But so we will more commonly see litters of like 1 or 2 than the larger ones. So her previous litter was just 1 individual. And then when she bred again, she had 4, which was amazing. And we got footage of those kittens in their den. And then we had footage again later, and she was at that point down to 2.
Do you have another question, Mr. Stockton's class?
Yeah, what is their main food source?
Yeah, great question as well. So that varies a bit again, depending on where they are. But here in our study area, their main food source is deer, and that is, we have a lot of them. They're widely available as a food source. And as an individual mountain lion gets larger, they can begin to specialize in larger prey. So, if you have a large male or even a very large female, they can then start to take larger prey like elk. And so they don't have to take an animal as often, because they're taking larger animals and the food resource lasts longer. But then you have those dispersing juvenile males that I was talking about, and they have a very malleable or changeable idea of what food is. So they're moving through territory. They don't have as good a sense of what resources are available or where the deer are and how they move or any of that stuff. So they're going to take what they can get, and we've seen them like try to tuck in on porcupines or grouse or really like whatever they can get their paws on. Sometimes that works out for them, sometimes not. But those are the ones that are going to probably end up in your backyard and think your cat might be a snack. They're the ones that make questionable choices. But typically deer. So the broad answer there is deer.
About how many deer on MPG Ranch?
We have
elk?
Yeah, we've got several hundred deer and several hundred elk. So we have a very robust population of both. And we tend to see that the mountain lions are, we find more mule deer probably in the kill sites. But I guess it also really depends on where we find these kill sites too. And sometimes elk. So it would benefit us to have larger individuals, larger mountain lions on the ranch property because then they could impact the elk population, which ours is at this point, I think for hunting district 204, which we are in, we are double management capacity. So we're trying to bring cow elk populations down, and larger mountain lions would really help with that.
Great, thank you for those questions, Arlie. Do we have Joliet on? Miss Nardinger's class?
It's like maybe not.
Maybe not. How about a class from Florence? Florence Carlton, are you there?
We're here.
There we go. Hi there.
Great. Do you
How
have
are
a
you
question?
doing?
Great.
Yes, we do have a question. Come up here and ask loud.
Say it loud.
Nice and loud.
How many mountain lions can live in 1 square foot?
Square mile.
Square mile?
In what is
How many mountain lions can live in a square mile?
square mile? So their home ranges, again, vary depending on food availability. So you could have a home range as small as 10 square miles for one individual, or you could have a home range as large as 300 square miles for one individual, depending how far they need to go for food. What we see on the ranch, we are about 26 square miles, and we have 7 individuals that have home ranges that make use of this property, and so they're coming and going and occupying the same space or not. So 1 square mile would be a bit too small to support a mountain lion. You'd need a bigger range than that.
Do you have another question?
We sure do. Go ahead.
So, how many deer do a mountain lion can eat in 1 month? How many deer would they have to eat?
Yeah, good question. And again, that's going to vary on how successful they are as a hunter, because they do have dry spells where they're not going to catch something, or if they're supporting young. So if it's a mother with offspring and how many she may have, they're going to go through that food resource faster. But say for one individual cat harvesting a deer, in ideal scenario, it's going to be every week to 10 days, something like that, they're going to harvest a deer. So maybe on average 3 per month, something like that would be about right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You bet. Do we have Chinook Elementary on?
We do.
Oh, good. Do you guys
Hi
have
there.
a couple questions? Good to see you,
We do.
Chinook.
Go ahead. Okay.
Where did the mountain lions come from?
Where?
Well, they've been here for many thousands of years, and I think the idea was evolutionarily that they died out in North America during the Pleistocene era, and then were repopulated from one genetic strain from South America. So they've been here for many, many thousands of years, co-evolving with people on the landscape.
Do you have another question, Chinook?
Fallon? Nice and loud.
Where do most of your mountain lions like to stay?
That's a great question. They like to stay where the food is. So they tend to follow the deer, and they need water, of course. But if you look behind me, you're going to see some different types of habitat. The grasslands that I'm standing in, even though mountain lions are fantastically well camouflaged for this grassland, and I can show you that because conveniently we have a mountain lion hide here. So you can see that this color is fantastic for the grasslands behind me. However, what we see, because we've done a lot of mapping with how they travel around the landscape, and then we compared that with vegetation surveys, and what we find is they like more cover. So they don't spend as much time in the grasslands, but they will be up in the shrublands. They will be in the river corridors, because they want the cover for camouflage that allows them to stalk. So we find them a lot in the forests, and we find them in the sagebrush and the bitterbrush areas, and in these vegetated draws. So the shrubby draws are really excellent corridors for everything, really, but predators make good use of them. So where we have good tree and shrub cover in our draws, we see a lot of mountain lions moving through there because it provides them the cover to do so. So that's what we tend to see. They want cover.
We have a couple questions from Lolo.
All right, Lolo, what's up?
Lolo wants to know, how large do mountain lions get?
I feel like my answer for everything is, well, that varies. And again, it does. Actually, here we can look at this. This is not a very big mountain lion, right? So this is a smaller individual, and mountain lion size is kind of like people size. So younger people are smaller, younger mountain lions are smaller. Females tend to be smaller on average than males. And so a mountain lion's going to ring in anywhere from 60, 80, 100 pounds maybe on the female side, maybe a little over that if they're really getting big. And then males are going to be like 1.5 to 2 times that. So they're going to be 160, 180 is going to be pretty big. They can get up to 200 or so. That's going to be pretty big. That would be a little bit more rare, but in your mature territorial males, you're going to have larger individuals. And the biggest one, because I Googled this up, I was curious, the biggest one that ever came through a game check station was in the Southwest, and it was like 270 pounds or something. It was shockingly large, which is a definite outlier. That is not your average size cat. They tend to be a little bit more modestly sized.
Then the other question they had was, how old is the oldest mountain lion?
Ooh, the oldest one. Let's see. We got DNA samples on F4. So if you're looking through your like charts of who's related to who, F4 is actually the first mountain lion that we ever got a DNA sample on, and that was in December of 2012. So if we figure in December of 2012, she was minimally 2 years old. She's probably older than that. That means that she, by December 2018, she's gonna be like 8, right? Something like that. So she's at least 8 years old. She's probably older than that. Mountain lions are gonna live up to about 13-ish in the wild. So she is probably, I would guess she's older than 8. So she's getting a little older. I hope that we found DNA samples from her again last winter. I don't know yet because all of our samples are still at the lab coming back to us. But that is the oldest individual we know about.
Great. Thanks, Lolo.
Yeah.
Do we have Minnesota on? Miss Fitzgerald's class. Doesn't sound like they made it yet. And we may have Libby popping in a minute, so
All right.
we'll just go with it. You know, that brings up the whole, research, and have we talked about how you track them and send off the samples and stuff?
Yeah, so I was talking about non-invasive sampling, and so and picking up all the DNA, and that goes off to the lab. And so we, through the lab, we can get species ID, then individual ID, and then we can track family groups too, which is how we know about F4 and we know who's related to who and not. So F4 being the one I was just talking about, who's the oldest individual that we know about, maintains a territory that is almost identical to F2, who is a little younger than her. She's probably about 7 now. And we can actually age F2 pretty accurately because we have imagery and DNA samples of when she was a kitten. And so we know her age really pretty clearly. But anyway, they have identical ranges and they're not related, and so they're super tolerant of each other, which is kind of amazing. But we've identified, I think, 4 family groups at this point, and we can track all those relations through the DNA, which is amazing. And because we've been doing this for now, several years, we're able to track, say, particularly F2, who's a female that we're going to be making a documentary on, because we have so much imagery of her, and we've known about her since she was a kitten, and the rest of her family was killed, and she survived. So she's got this really compelling story. She's gone on to raise now 3 kittens successfully, which is also really cool. But we can follow her through all these different stages of her life, and it's kind of amazing to be able to track one individual for several years like that.
What part do the cameras play on the ranch?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so we have an extensive camera network on MPG. If you've explored our website, I hope you have. You'll get to see a lot of footage coming in Maybe not as much right now because we do turn some of them off during hunting season because we don't want people to use our cameras in a way that they should not be used. But we have, even just like right here, a live camera. We've got like 14 live cameras that you can go on and move around and look at stuff. So during the winter tracking season, you'll be able to do that, and you might even see us out there in the field. And then we have this Buckeye network that's on they all talk to each other, and so they, are activated by motion, and they take pictures all the time, and that stuff goes live to the web. And we have our stealth camera network, which are like little game cameras. We have to go pull the cards and change the batteries on all of those. But those are the ones that are in more remote places, and those are often the ones that catch a lot of mountain lion activity. So for my purposes, it's fantastic because I can look at a track line, and then I can find all of the DNA that we picked up along that track line. And one of those things will probably be an individual. And then I can go to the nearest couple of cameras and look for a date window, plus or minus a couple days from when we track that individual. And I, so far, always find imagery of that individual mountain lion going by, which is really awesome for us because the images that we give to you, that's how we know. That's how we know for certain that it is that specific individual.
That's amazing. Let's take some more questions. Go back to Arlie. And Libby, how we're doing this is we'll just go around and ask questions. So I know you got in late, but if you have questions about mountain lions or the research that's being done here. Go ahead, Mr. Stockton's class. Do you have a question or two?
Is there hunting allowed on the ranch?
There is no predator hunting allowed on the ranch, but there is hunting allowed for deer and for elk. Like I maybe mentioned with this group, in Hunting District 204 here, our elk populations are double management goals, so we have a lot of elk. We took over the property in 2009. There were like 250 elk wintering here. Now there are over 600 elk wintering here. Most of them are cow, so we permit hunting of right now cow elk and some deer, but we do not allow predator hunting. So we're like a sanctuary space for mountain lions. So there are generations of cougars that have grown up here that have not felt hunting pressure as long as they stay reasonably on our property.
Great. Do you have another question, Arlie?
Is there a lot of bears?
Yeah. I think like maybe 14 individual bears identified. We, if you go to our YouTube page, there is like a 45-minute video that goes super deep into all of the bear research, and again, how all of them are related, and tons of camera footage, and shows how they make use of the property. So that's a really cool video. If you want to check that one out, you can learn a lot about bears on the property. But yes, definitely bears. And again, they also really like the vegetated draws, they like the forested lands, and they really like the water, particularly in the warmer months, because they do a lot of thermoregulation by, splashing about in our stock tanks or in the pools back in Davis Creek.
Great. How about Chinook? Chinook, do you have one or two more questions?
Griffin?
How many mountain lions, what aren't related, do you find sharing a carcass?
So far, we have found, so the instance that we discovered that, we found F2, who was with her offspring at the time, F9. So she had a young one with her, and they were sharing a carcass with F4, who's the oldest one that we were talking about. We thought everybody was related. They were not. So that's what we have seen. And hopefully we'll find other instances of that, but right now that's the one that we have seen. And when we found that, we were really, scratching our heads, because that's not something that's, I guess, commonly believed to be a practice of mountain lions. They're not thought to be as tolerant or social as we are seeing them to be. And the literature tends to portray them as much more solitary. And I think we feel good having what we've seen backed up by what Mark Elbrock is seeing in his study, because he has collared individuals that he can get cameras on. And so he did a little NPR piece just recently, and you can, look all that stuff up. But I think that the improvement in camera technology and DNA technology is really helping us to get a much better window into what's going on out there with populations.
Great question. Do you have another one, Chinook?
Fletcher?
Where do the mountain lions most likely get their water?
We don't tend to see them very much in the floodplain. Our draws are not super well vegetated all the way down, so we don't have great connectivity there. We tend to see mountain lions getting water from Davis Creek to my northeast and Woodchuck Creek to my southeast. So those are the places, or Miller Creek, those are the places that I tend to see them getting their water from.
We have a question from Lolo.
Yeah.
Lolo would like to know, what time of year do mountain lions give birth?
So, interestingly enough, mountain lions do not have a specific breeding season. So they can give birth to young at any time of the year. There tends to be a birth pulse in the spring, so that when mountain lion mothers have babies they need to feed, or they need to feed themselves really well because they're nursing those babies, the young ones of the deer and the elk are also being born because they're much easier to hunt. So those things tend to coincide a little bit more, but that's not an always sort of thing. They can have young at any time of year. So we will see young ones throughout the seasons.
Great. Florence Carlton, do you have a question?
We do have a question.
Good.
No, come up here, say it loud. So just lean forward. Go ahead.
How many territorial mountain lions are there on the ranch?
One that we know of. And what we have seen is every year the territorial male, that is our breeding male that produces the offspring with the females, is killed by hunters. So we get like a snapshot in the winter that this is the breeding male for this territory, and then that individual's gone. And then next year we have another one, and then that individual's gone. And so right now we know of one male that seems to be on the property for a couple of years now, was not probably the territorial male initially, and I suspect he might be now. But we'll know a lot more when we get our genetics in. But there's usually one territorial male for a pretty large territory that overlaps several females.
When do you expect to get that genetic data?
Oh goodness, fingers crossed. Certainly in the next couple months. They usually get it to me by December at the latest. We give them a lot of samples.
Those people working on the challenge may see a little bit of that, maybe.
Yeah, so those of you working on the challenge, you're going to discover this at the same time I discover it. So it's going to be really cool for both of us, because when I get that information back, I will make that available to you, and we will both together learn a lot more about this population.
Great. We've had Libby on. I know they're on a weird schedule today, but if you're on, Libby, do you have any questions? All you have to do is unmute your microphone.
No Libby.
They may be there, but I know they're coming in and out because it's a short schedule.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
Send us a question if you can.
Yep. Great. Let's see. What time?
How we doing?
We've got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah. So what have?
We have a couple more questions. If that's okay.
Great.
Yeah. Lay it
go
on me.
ahead, Bill.
Okay, we got 2 students that are going to come up and ask.
Okay.
This is awkward. What age are what age are cubs when they usually depart from their mother to survive on their own?
Yeah, males tend to disperse a little bit sooner sometimes, but it's a window of like 11 months to 2 years, with the average being like maybe about 18 months. So that's about dispersal age. So they spend a long time with their mothers. And if you ever see like on camera or happen to see like out in the woods, a group of mountain lions together that all look like they're adults, that's a mother with young that are full grown and definitely like reaching dispersal age. And sometimes even if they have a male in the mix, that male can be like the size of the mother or even bigger. And so so that's when people are like, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of mountain lions all hanging out together. But typically it's a family group, and they're really near to dispersal age at that point.
It's like mom with teenagers.
Yeah, mom with some subadults.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got another question? Mr. Stockton's class?
So how do the mountain lions usually attack their prey, such as deer?
Cool. I was hopeful someone would ask this because I wanted to talk a little bit about hunting style and technique and how that's different for mountain lions and other predators. Mountain lions are more of like a stalk and ambush predator. Their preferred means of locomotion through the landscape is a walk. They will trot sometimes. They will definitely run after prey, but they tend to move. They're like a forest ninja. They walk around slowly, and they will sneak up very close to unsuspecting prey, and then in a giant burst of speed, they will close the distance. They can run like 40 miles an hour at a sprint, so they're really fast. And they are built, if you look at the build of a mountain lion, they're built more like a sprinter and more like a wrestler. And so when they hit prey, they're going to either bite the face to suffocate the prey, bite the back of the skull to crush that and kill the prey, bite the jugular to bleed the prey out, break the neck. They're gonna go for a kill in some way, which is kind of unique too, because, you know, say like wolves or bear will begin feeding on something sometimes before it's dead, whereas a mountain lion will kill the prey, and then they will open it up, remove the internal organs, which is also pretty unique, set those aside. They're like super neat and tidy, and they eat the hard organs, so like lungs, liver, heart, all that kind of business. Leave the intestines in the rumen. They don't want that stuff. The only thing at a kill site that's going to eat a rumen is going to be a bear, so you can help with like kill site ID that way. But they have a really tidy kill site because then they start tucking in on the meat, and they will cache their prey, and they'll come back to it and feed on it until it's gone. And so they have a very contained kill site. They often establish a latrine, which helps us because that is just a wonderful site to collect DNA samples from, because they want to poop in one place, and then they bury it over, and we get this big duff pile of mountain lion scat, which is great for us. And they usually then like bed uphill a little ways and just come back and feed and come back and feed. So their hunting tactic is that walk, stalk, and then explosive speed to fill the gap. And whereas like a wolf or a coyote or something like that, they're like more like a distance runner, right? They're lanky, they're thin, they can, you know, kind of jog along through the landscape. They like trots. A trot is one of their gaits that they make use of quite a bit. And then they can run stuff down. So they're going to smell something and then take off after it, and they can run and maintain speed for, you know, long distances.
How far do mountain lions jump?
Well, yeah.
The loaded question.
Right. So mountain lions, at a bound, they can. So if they're moving, right, and they're jumping on the move, they can bound up further than that. So up to 40 feet, which is crazy far, right? You can stop about there probably. So that's really far. They can jump up into a tree like 15 feet, no problem. I have not seen, 40 feet is really long, and what I have seen in the wild tracking these individuals is that they can be going from a walk to that explosion of speed And I've seen easily 20, 25 feet between full imprints of them in the snow. 40 feet's pretty darn far. I have seen an individual that ran, jumped off of a tree, and then like parkour, like hit the tree. Then there was snow on the tree, so there's like a full lion print on the tree, and then it pushed off, and I had to like circle around the tree, moving out until I found the tracks like 30 feet away. So it pushed off this tree and launched itself. So I've seen things like that. I haven't quite seen 40 feet, but that's what the Googles will tell you.
Great. Any other questions from any
We have
of
one
us?
more question from Florence.
Go ahead.
A lot of times people are scared of mountain lions, but we were curious of how many people do you ever know that were killed by a mountain lion?
I don't know what the statistics are on that. I don't know anyone that's ever been killed. I do know of people that have been stalked, and I do know of people that have had pretty scary interactions. Those interactions were either with dispersing juvenile males that were very curious about what was going on and confronted someone to be like, are you prey? What are you? What's going on? Or a territorial male that wanted to push someone out of their territory and was very confrontational. I've also heard from hunters that have found mountain lions stalking them. So that sort of predatory behavior, those are stories you remember, but they're quite rare. So I've been tracking mountain lions since I was too young to be safely tracking mountain lions, but I was fascinated by them, so I did it anyway. But now, like, just for this project, I've been tracking them in the field for 6 years, and I've been tracking them, on my own for much longer than that. And even to see one is quite rare. And we very often find their tracks in our tracks on the way back, so we know that we're overlapping out there. But negative interactions, I think, are quite rare. But I do think it's good to be on your guard and to be very conscious of your surroundings and to be mindful of what's there. Bear spray works great on everything. So, I mean, it is a fire extinguisher of mace. And so it will work on mountain lions too. Though what I've read is you may have to shoot them more than once because they are stubborn.
Thank you.
Big for them?
Yeah, so for mountain lions too, like if you are confronted, they want to take prey from behind. So if you turn and run, that is bad. So you want to keep them in front of you. You want to be big. You can yield ground, but you want to be large and loud and kind of aggressive, and you can throw stones and sticks and whatever to defend yourself. But you want to be very mindful to keep in front of you. And again, bear spray would be great in that instance. Yeah.
Great. Good question. Okay, we've got time for one or two more questions. Anybody?
Chinook has a question.
Okay.
Mara? How many mountain lions do you catch in about a year?
Well, we don't catch them, so the only way that we would capture anything would be through DNA. So that'd be like picking up hair or scat. So we're not actually handling mountain lions at all. We don't touch them. We don't put collars on them. And how many we identify year to year, really kind of, it varies on how successful we are in the field and how good the DNA is that we pick up. So maybe we're averaging like 6 that we identify every year. I think that's probably about it. Some years we've had like a couple of seasons in there that were really slow and like snow conditions were really bad. It was very warm, tracking was hard, or it rained a lot or whatever. And so we didn't pick up as much DNA, or the DNA wasn't as viable. But maybe on average we're identifying like 6 a year.
Great. We have a question from Lolo.
How many live sightings do you see on average?
How many live sightings in a year?
I would say in the last 5 years we've had, with the trackers that have been out actively in the territory tracking these cats, we've had two live sightings.
So, and that's...
Actually, no, sorry, three live sightings.
And so, that's something else to think about as these students are working with this, is if this is something they get interested in. It seems like there's a lot of really cool work to be done on this. Maybe down the road they can be researchers or trackers or
Yeah.
data analysts or
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting time because advances in camera technology and DNA technology are allowing us to learn about the natural world and the behaviors and temperament and practices of the creatures that inhabit that in a way that we have never been able to before. It's really unique. It's an exciting time to be learning new things. So yeah, it's really cool. We just were assisting in a study that broke new ground in discovering that you can, through the use of eDNA, which is for fisheries, and they just scoop up water and run it through a filter and look at the DNA for presence, absence of whatever they're looking for. And we found you can do the same thing with snow. So that's a new project coming out of Rocky Mountain Research Station. It is brand spanking new. It's like cutting edge stuff and fascinating that we're able to do that. So we're learning new things every day. It's really cool.
Are there opportunities for students on the ranch?
There are all kinds of opportunities for students on the ranch, particularly high school kids. So if you're younger and you want to come down, please, you can come for a field trip. We've got a lot of stuff going on we can get you connected with. If you are in high school, we have an internship program through Ecology Project International. They're our partner organization. It's called the Bitterroot Wildlife Internship. And you can come down to the ranch in the summer and partner with researchers, and you live and work on the ranch for 4 weeks at a go. You go home on the weekends, but you're here for the week. So that's a really unique opportunity. And then also for tracking, like you can come to the ranch. I do public tracking days. I'll take people out, kind of do tracking 101. And then Ecology Project International also has winter projects that they run in the Yellowstone ecosystem where you can go out, work with researchers, and get firsthand experience as well.
Great. Well, I hope that got you excited about doing the challenge, got you some information, and we'll be sending out more later. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks to Joshua. Talk to you later.
See you, everybody. Thank you.